I am a filmmaker in Korea. I direct and I produce, and I've been living here since 2008. I'm originally from San Jose, California, and I also am a DJ. I know my family, most of them, they lived in Seoul. Like my grandma is originally from Daegu. Her husband passed away quite young, but most of my family's life, like my father and my mother, they lived in Seoul. They actually lived in the Jongno area, which is apparently like a hot spot. It was kind of like the Gangnam of their time. That's where they lived until they all went over to San Jose. Where I'm from, like I largely like I was the only Korean at my school, or me and my sister. And I think growing up, honestly, until I was like 10, like people didn't know what Korea was. Like it's always like, are you Chinese or Japanese? And then like pause. And then I say Korea and they're like, oh, like the war. I'm like, oh, yeah, kind of, you know? Like now you see so many more, but where I grew up in San Jose, there was a Korea, like an unofficial Korea town, but the Korean community, like I would get access to it from going to church or going to like Korean markets and stuff like that. You know, like I grew up in the 80s, you know, I was born in the early 80s and like I'm a small like Asian guy, you know. Even to this day, like I still get picked on if I go abroad. And I think as a little kid, like I've had just like people like steal things from me, like right in front of me. And I think if I wasn't like an Asian, a small Asian man, like people wouldn't have done that. It sounds kind of funny, but I think there was something inside me that really wanted to get into like Korean culture and reconnect with it. And it was like K-pop. It was like 90s K-pop in high school. And that started like my curiosity to Korea. And I think back then I just told my dad, like, I really want to visit Korea. So I came by myself, like on this tour, and then just visited family. And then it's funny because I live here now, but my dream as like a high schooler was to live in Korea. I don't listen to K-pop anymore. It was just an introduction to my culture, and it was in a form that was kind of cool and I think more accessible for like an American kid. But I think deep down, it's like I wanted to just be around Korean people, but I didn't know how to say it. So my sister was like studying abroad here. She was doing a program at Yonsei. I was in the position where I had a bit more money just to like go, you know, take a plane somewhere, and I felt more comfortable traveling by myself. So I went to visit my sister, and I liked it so much. Like the first day I came here, it was insane. It felt like the running of the bulls, walking in Hongdae, like 10 years ago. There's just people like all over the streets. And I think I just had like the best trip ever. So that got me hooked. And then I came and I decided like I just need to move here and just figure it out. So I stayed at my sister's place. And then when she went back to San Francisco to finish her school, I stayed at her apartment. It was just like a one room like office tel in Shinchon. So I lived in Shinchon for like the first 3 years. Honestly, like I was so broke when I first came here. Like a lot of people come here and teach English, and I was still like transitioning in between schools. So I couldn't, you know, get like a typical Hagwon job. I couldn't get like any job. So it was a lot of tutoring. Like my plan was to transfer and go to school in New York and finish and like study photography because that's what I was doing before and that's what I majored in. But then, yeah, I just couldn't find work. So I just did like odd jobs. Like I made enough to pay my rent and just to eat like a little bit, but I didn't go out to eat for the first 2 years in Korea because I was so broke. Like my English teaching friends were like rich to me, you know? I was just like, well, you guys are ballers, you know? Like being able to go travel and stuff like that or just like eat out. Like there's some restaurants that were like just like untouchable to me, you know? I was like, I can't go in there. I love like archiving things. I love talking to people and just like naturally just interviewing people. And I love like storytelling and I'm a very like visual oriented person. I wanted to be a cinematographer. Like I was really into like Wong Kar-wai movies at the time and Asian cinema. At first I just tried to approach people, but like the Korean people, like they just kind of rolled their eyes at me like, okay, like sure, like, and I couldn't get any like assisting jobs as a photographer or filmmaker. So I was listening to these podcasts by this guy like Michael Hurt, and he did this one on Korean film. And he did it with this guy, Darcy Perkett, who ran koreafilm.org. So I went on that website and I just looked at the contributors, and there was like a guy on there, and it was like a German guy who does photography, and he's really into like Wong Kar-wai, and he wrote his like you know, thesis or dissertation on Wong Kar-wai. So I was like, oh, he's awesome. So I hit him up, and then I started helping him with his photography projects. And then I told him that I wanted to learn how to do film. So I just started assisting mostly on the camera side for like a year for free, like on my days off. And then that later turned into a job. Yeah, it was mostly like me just kind of going out and networking and just trying to meet a bunch of people. And then that helped, I think, me get a lot of jobs. I started out doing documentary, and that's like was like my base. And it's a good way for you to learn a lot of things. And I get to meet like all sorts of people from like defectors, um, to like a fashion designer to like cartoonists, like all sorts of people. And I love just like meeting a person and just trying to learn as much as I can about them and then present them in a way that kind of does who they are justice. So I think for the people and the just kind of, yeah, situations and places that I get to see, like those are the times like I'm really grateful. Like I got to, work on the opening ceremonies, for the Pyeongchang Olympics. We shot, like the drone show. And every day it was like a 2-week rehearsal. Like every night we got to see like, you know, 1,000 drones that were basically controlled by a computer in these like formations that were later going to be shown in the Olympics. And it sounds cheesy, but when I was like young, I was like really into the Olympics and watching them, and it was like my dream to be in the Olympics. But I still got to be a part of them in like a different facet. Just seeing that in minus 30 temperature at like 3 in the morning every night, the drone formation was like one of the coolest things ever. I think as I became a director, I started just incorporating, like using my middle name more. My middle name is Yoonsuk, and I never used it growing up. And in Korea, even if somebody called me that, it's only at like banks or at the doctors where I would use it. For me, it's like it's a big part of my identity, and it's I think like it shows that I'm Korean American. It's not like I'm trying to be like international or something like, hey, I speak English, but it's like, this is who I am. And I don't want to shy away from that. And I think I did that just to like, I don't know, reinstate like I'm a Kyopo, and I'm just like kind of more proud of that now. There's a long period where I got really defensive. I think when I learned the term like, chabyol, which is like discrimination, I used it so much because I didn't know how to like deal with like the daily like microaggressions that you can get as a Korean American. Like, when people ask you questions like, oh, like 너 한국 사람 다 됐다. And it's like, I've always been Korean. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, you try living in like a mostly white neighborhood and say that to somebody. It's not like I was, white, or saying like, Aaron, do you know how to use chopsticks? And it's like, dude, I probably ate better Korean food growing up than I moved here. Like I came to Korea and I had bad Korean food for the first time because my grandma was such an amazing chef, and my mom. Those kind of things, like people don't mean it in a bad way, but like it really like gets to you. It's not like I stopped caring, but I just try to like ignore that a bit more, and I understand like what it means, like the kind of thoughts behind it. Yeah, I'm just kind of more comfortable in who I am. Whenever I go travel abroad, I identify as Korean, which is like really kind of funny. It's just like our lives are more complicated, and that's not always a bad thing too. Like I like that I'm not just like vanilla, like I like that um I don't know, like, I don't wanna say exotic, but I like that I'm more, like, complicated and difficult and, harder to make sense of because that's the kinda stuff that I like anyways, and that's the stuff that I'm attracted to. Yeah, I'm really grateful for that, and I'm always, like, a huge advocate for Korean people to come back, and don't just come back on a trip. Like, you kinda have to come here and, like, really, like, 고생. Like, you have to, pick up dirty dishes, and you have to like be in situations that, are very difficult, because I think it just makes you into a stronger like Korean person. I'm a big advocate for people coming back because I think at one point in your life you're going to be very curious. You're going to look in the mirror and just wonder like who you are and where you're from. Because of this, I got to understand my parents more, and that was a huge gift. Like I mentioned, like my dad who passed away, when I was at the hospital, I was able to like completely translate for him with the doctors. That I felt like was something that was like, in the making. Like I felt like that made my 14 years here like completely worth it, that I was able to help him in that way. I don't know. I just wish Americans or like Kyopos would all just kind of move back and live in Korea. My name is Aaron Yoonsuk Cho, and this is my Korean American story.